Good evening. I just still know there's some people filing in, so we'll be patient as they make their way in. My name is John Cervoni. I'm principal of West Seneca East High School. So on behalf of the West Seneca community and our parent group and our teachers and administrators, I'd like to welcome you tonight. This evening will allow you an opportunity to learn and to hear more about the effects of high-stake testing, the implementation of the Common Core, and how our students and teachers have been affected. In addition, you'll have an opportunity to learn more about how student data is being shared through a company called eBloom. Tonight is a great opportunity to hear from school and community leaders, parents, teachers, and administrators on these topics. So whether these topics are regular discussion around your dinner table or perhaps you're here to increase your knowledge on them, I'm sure you'll find tonight beneficial. So on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to welcome you one last time, and I'd like to introduce a parent of a child at Northwood, Mrs. Molly Dana. Allendale.
Thank you. I actually have two boys at Allendale. Okay. So, hello everyone. Just a few side notes before we begin. A few weeks ago, several of our West Seneca families suffered tremendous damage and devastation caused by flooding creek waters. 80 homes were affected. So our community is actually collecting monetary donations, and I believe that you can find more information about that on our district website. Our hearts go out to those families. Okay, so here we go. Good evening. My name is Molly Dana, and I am accompanied by my three fellow Common Core Committee members, Carrie Brown, there she is, Joanne Janowski, I always get that K in there, and Peggy Pizzuto. Since there are so many acronyms in education, we thought we'd use one too. We like to refer to ourselves using the acronym MOM, Moms on a Mission. Between the four of us, we have 10 children in the West Seneca School District attending school at the elementary, middle, and high school level. Our committee formed from DPC, District Parent Council. For those of you unfamiliar with DPC, we are a group of parents, Board of Ed members, administrators, and teachers representing every school in our district. We meet on a monthly basis to share events happening in our schools. Our goal tonight is that everyone in attendance will walk away with a deeper understanding of the current climate in education. Tonight, my heart is touched to be in a room full of people who share one common and important value: our children. Every one of us in this room tonight is here because we love our children and we want the best for them, which includes a comprehensive and joyful education. There's no question that public education has been a hot topic in New York State. You can't turn on the TV without seeing a story related to education or pick up a newspaper without reading an article about it. Unless you have a teacher in your family, it's hard to follow much of the debated education reform. We've all heard about the Common Core Learning Standards, CCLS, and the New York State high stakes tests in 3 through 8. Maybe you've heard about RTTT, Race to the Top. Perhaps you've read about eBloom, Student Private Data Collection, or Teacher and Principal Evaluations known as APPR, Annual Professional Performance Review. And maybe you've heard about SLOs, Student Learning Objectives. A whole lot of acronyms, right? As parents, it's easy to get lost in the maze of education acronyms and reform talk, and it can be difficult to find the facts in half-truths and misleading statistics. But in talking with parents from many districts, one thing remains constant, and that is our love for our children and our desire to provide the best education possible. This evening was organized to help parents understand how the current mandates and reforms are affecting our children and their public education. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts who also share in our love for children and whose goal is to provide the best education possible for the students of West Seneca. Please hold your applause until I've introduced our very large panel. We have our very own Superintendent of West Seneca Central School District, Dr. Mark Crawford. We have Dr. Mark Garrison, Professor of Education Policy and Research. Mr. Mark Bueller, West Seneca's Chief Information Officer. Mrs. Janice Delbo, Vice President of the West Seneca Board of Education. Mrs. Marge Borchert, Principal of Allendale Elementary. And unfortunately, Miss Rachel Badger could not be with us tonight, a bit of a stomach bug. We have Mr. Ray Ball, teacher from East Middle. Mrs. Kim Greenway, art teacher from Northwood Elementary. And Miss Rosalia Caraba, librarian from East Middle. Mrs. Caroline Gallagher, kindergarten teacher, Allendale. Mrs. Jackie Nowinski, first grade teacher, Allendale Elementary. And last but not least, Mrs. Carrie Burns, speech pathologist, West Seneca Central Schools. We'd like to thank our panel for being here tonight. I feel so proud because we are the first district in our area to have an event like this. You see, this panel represents all vested stakeholders in education: our superintendent, district administration, principals, teachers, parents. We consider this panel to be the experts in education. This is an outstanding group of education advocates, and our committee is truly grateful for your participation tonight. Please give them one more round of applause. That's my mom. Okay. Tonight's event will run as follows. Our committee has created a series of questions for each of the panelists to answer within an allotted time frame. Panelists, please try to keep your answers within the time frame. Peggy is our official timekeeper, and she will keep you on track. She also has a water gun, which she will squirt at you if you do not keep to your time. Okay, so once the panel has presented, we will open the floor to questions from the audience. Okay, before we begin, I'd just like to note that in your green program, there's a copy of the West Seneca Board of Education Statement of Concern, which was sent to Commissioner King last spring. Our board was one of the first to draft such a statement, and we are truly grateful for your stance. Yes. Also, on the back of the program, you will find contact information for Senator Gallivan, Assemblyman Mickey Kearns. We encourage all parents and teachers to contact their representatives to communicate your feelings about the reforms. Also, on the way out, please take copies that our committee has put together for you if you haven't already. You will find great resources and links about these reforms. Our committee feels very strongly that parents should have a voice in education policy and reform, and we hope you will join us in advocating for our students, teachers, and schools. So let's begin. Okay. Dr. Crawford, can you give us a superintendent's perspective of the most difficult mandates to implement?
Thank you, Molly. Before I begin, just to say thank you to all of you for taking time to come out here this evening, and also from our friends in the media, we appreciate the coverage this evening. And also for the District Parent Council and our moms here who helped to organize this evening. Thank you so much. For the mandates that we've been asked to implement, certainly Common Core has been challenging. APPR has been challenging, and the testing has been challenging. Common Core also stems out of, I should begin a little historically, with Race to the Top, a federal program designed by Secretary Arne Duncan, who works in President Obama's cabinet. He collaborated with the Gates Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, Rupert Murdoch, Pearson Publishing, and others to initiate Race to the Top, which had a lot to do with initiating Common Core, but also tying standardized testing to teacher evaluations. In West Seneca, we received, over a 4-year period, or we were scheduled to receive $270,000. Over the last 4 years, we've spent, in addition to that $270,000 that would have reimbursed us, we spent almost $300,000 of our own money helping to implement this. I want to be clear to everybody, the Common Core does have value. And the curricula for various grade levels and subjects are challenging and do seek deeper understanding of subject matter by students. However, we are concerned that Common Core narrows the curriculum, reduces opportunities for creativity, and does not adequately address the multiple intelligences of our children. 2 years ago, some of you will remember, we had a delegation of 22 educators come to West Seneca from China. Do you know why they came? They want to know how we support and elicit from our kids creativity. They, in China, have a culture where they teach to the test. They work on rote memory. And they come here wondering about creativity. We seem to be reversing that trend. Teachers also have not had adequate professional development to properly implement the Common Core. They've not had enough time to learn the standards very well themselves, and children are tested on material they have not seen before. So to us, and to me particularly, it's as though we put the cart before the horse. The tests given last year were flawed. They were not valid or reliable. Neither were they diagnostic nor prescriptive. The feedback loop for parents and their children, teachers and administrators is broken. The tests were taken in April, and we didn't learn about the children's performance on tests until October. And the only information received then was that children's were either 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4s. I personally have trouble batching children by those numbers. This information, in my view, was neither useful nor timely. I spent 19 years as a principal, and I used standardized tests as a means of giving feedback to parents in a timely way. We take the tests in March or early April. I'd have the tests back in hand reports in June, send a letter with the test reports to parents with bar graphs, giving everyone the diagnostic information as well as what we could do prescriptively to help a child over the summer to strengthen any of those weaknesses so that they were stronger when they came back to school in September. And also, teachers got copies of those reports so they knew who was coming into their classroom in September, and they knew what they had to do to address those children. The other problem with the testing is that 40% of our teachers' evaluations are derived from these test scores. So to me, it's illegitimate to be evaluating teachers having 40% of their evaluation based on valid and unreliable tests. I think it's just wrong. And I want to say again, we're not opposed to a vigorous or rigorous evaluation of our teachers. We had a wonderful instrument that we used and processed before APPR came along. The other thing that I should say about testing is that for a child testing, there are a number of influences that have an impact on his performance. Those may be the social capital at home, whether or not he's read to at night or she. Do children go to museums with the family? Do they go to libraries? Do relatives talk about careers and dreams? Those kinds of things are called social capital that are provided by friends and relatives. What about the children who have varying degrees of anxiety taking a test or coming to a test with great confidence? What about the school culture? So there are all kinds of influences and factors in testing that have an effect on a child's performance. The other thing I wanted to get at very quickly is In Bloom. In Bloom, through the legislation that Arne Duncan had passed in Congress, provides for the circumvention of FERPA, so that it was the consent of parents is not required to have their child's private information transported into a national database. That national database seeks to capture not only student achievement, but attendance, discipline, health records, and other kinds of information. The long view, what about protecting it? We're concerned about all the breaches that we're seeing with systems now. You've seen enough of it, not only with the TSA, but with Target and others. The other thing I'm concerned about in the future is social engineering. Who's going to be looking at that data? Is it going to be also the Department of Health and Human Services? Is it going to be the Department of Labor? Sometimes I have young men and women at my table for a superintendent's hearing. Is some prospective employer going to look at that database and say, this boy, when he was 16, was at a superintendent hearing and had this consequence because of what he did? And how about that boy or young man or young woman who grew up and at 25 is now responsible, but there's a bias in that prospective employer looking at that data? So there are a lot of concerns about that. Now, I just want to share some information with you, and I beg indulgence from our panel, but this is something I just got today. From the Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver and the Education Chair Kathleen Nolan call for a delay in Common Core test-based assessments and sharing of student privacy data. This came out today. Many of our colleagues, as well as advocates and stakeholders, have raised numerous concerns regarding the State Education Department's rollout of Common Core. New Yorkers share the same goal: to improve our schools and help prepare our students to be successful in college and career ready upon graduation. However, given the serious issues that have been raised over the past year, we feel it's both prudent and wise to take the following action. The use of Common Core aligned tests for high-stakes decisions for teachers, principals, and students should be delayed at a minimum for 2 years. At the same time, State Education Department should continue to develop Common Core aligned curricula and assist local school districts in developing their own curricula so that teachers will be able to successfully teach Common Core aligned subjects while at the same time helping students reach their maximum potential. As we have stated in the past, there are equally serious concerns and potential flaws regarding plans to share student data with private third-party vendors. There are persistent questions regarding the ability to protect such data from security breaches, the necessity of the details and categories of such student data that are being shared, as well as highly inappropriate potential for commercialization. State education should delay the use of In Bloom or any third-party vendor in developing a data portal until all these questions have been answered and the concerns fully justified. From the New York State co-leaders, Dean Skelos and Jeff Klein, and the Senate Education Chair John Flanagan, they call for a delay of Common Core and sharing of student privacy data. We continue to support the goals of improved education curriculum and increases standards and ensures that students are college and career ready. However, after having spent months listening to parents, teachers, administrators, and educational professionals at public hearings conducted throughout New York State, it is our belief that while the implementation of Common Core learning standards may have been well intended, it has been poorly executed. We continue to have grave concerns over this flawed rollout. Unless the Board of Regents acts to alleviate the concerns of parents, teachers, and other educators, we call on the Regents to delay the use of Common Core tests for high-stakes decisions about teachers, principals, and students for a minimum of 2 years. During this time, SED should continue to develop curricula aligned with higher standards and assist local districts. Okay. In addition, students, parents, and teachers, privacy experts, and school administrators have raised serious concerns about the ability of unauthorized third parties to access personally identifiable information of students, teachers, and principals that will be collected on the statewide education data portal. Therefore, we reiterate our call for the Regents to delay operation of the education data portal for at least 1 year. In the end, our goal must be to continue the development of higher learning standards in the best interest of our students and their futures. And finally, from the Governor's office, Governor Cuomo believes that the best long-term economic development strategy is ensuring New York has the strongest possible education system, so on and so forth. However, the Governor believes that the way that the Common Core has been managed by the Board of Regents is flawed, leading to too much uncertainty, confusion, and anxiety among students and their parents. The strength of public education in New York is dependent on a rational system that is well administered. 2 weeks ago, the Governor announced that he will assemble a panel that includes education experts and members of the legislature to identify flaws in Common Core's rollout and take corrective action by the end of the session. The Governor believes that there are two issues, Common Core and teacher evaluation, and they must be analyzed separately. It would be premature to consider any moratorium before the panel is allowed to do its work. So there's movement on the Governor's part, and there's great movement in the legislature. So as a call to action, I think these forums have resulted in some significant change in the thinking in Albany, and the cards that you've been given tonight to contact our legislators, very important to do it. Talk to family and friends, and communicate, attend any other forums that may be in our area, and make sure that you do communicate with our leaders in Albany. I am pleased to say that we've been working closely with them, and it's nice to see that there's action being taken in Albany, and they're ready to move. I understand that if the Regents don't take action, the legislature intends to take action on its own to make sure that these changes occur. Thank you very much.
Dr. Garrison, can you please explain the federal legislators called Race to the Top? Why was it written? Who wrote it? And why did states agree to it? Were laws changed in order to implement it?
Yes. My name is Mark Garrison. I'm professor of education policy and research at DeVille College, and I teach in the Education Leadership Doctoral Program. As is now customary, the views that I'm about to tell you are my views and don't represent the views of my employer. It's actually not funny. What we're really talking about is a historic shift in the question of outlook and how we think about ourselves, and that's reflected in how we educate our children. At the end of the day, it's not a technical question or even a matter of policy. What we're seeing is the genesis of something that's been taking place since Richard Nixon first used the word of accountability. This is the gestation of a very long plan, and although we're seeing progress and success, I want you to think broadly about how we think about education and what it reflects about how we think about human beings. The best way to see a society's understanding of its youth and the whole humanity is to look at how its leaders propose that we educate our young. I want you to think carefully about this quote. I don't know if you can see it. It's from John Engler, who's the president of the Business Roundtable, a leading advocate of Common Core, or what's called Career and College Ready. One of the things I want to sensitize everybody to, and I ask you to look into it, is that the entire thing that we're seeing is not just Common Core, it's called Career and College Ready. And I put quotes around that. Here's what he said in case you can't see it. All the products of K-12 system are either going to go to the university or they're going to the workforce. The military is not here, but they're not very different. This was in an interview with him and Arnie Duncan from the U.S. Department of Education and some other folks who were key players. It's not an accident that that language is being used, and it's embedded in every piece of policy that comes from Washington and the foundations that are driving what we see. So, that's really small, and I'm sorry, so let's just go over it real quick. Where did Race to the Top come from? Race to the Top came from the American Reinvestment Act, ARA. Okay? Why did we have that? Anyone know why we had ARA? Because people with an enormous amount of money gambled on people's mortgages and played around with a lot of money in a fraudulent way. As a matter of fact, this idea of derivatives comes from one of the consulting firms that's connected to Enron. Its name is McKinsey & Company. The architect of the Common Core met with Sir Michael Barber of Pearson, who's also behind the Common Core, at McKinsey & Company. McKinsey & Company was the architect of the Enron derivative scandal. Those folks taught our current architects of Common Core what to do. So we had ARA. In ARA was money to stimulate the economy. There was 6 portions of ARA that dealt with education. It was about $100 billion. And this money was given to the states if they complied with certain federal requirements and included extra money for Title I and so on and so forth. One feature of that was called Race to the Top, $4.35 billion. This $4.35 billion was given to the U.S. Secretary of Education to use discretionary funds without congressional oversight. Although ARA was meant to stimulate the economy, the Obama administration decided to use this money to stimulate the reforms that it wanted. So directly it said, we want more charters, more privatization, more high-stakes testing, and more data sharing. And they constructed Race to the Top grants to pressure states to apply for those grants during a time when states were finding it very difficult to fund things like even basic infrastructure for schools and other things. What do you call a government that uses bribery to engineer reform? I think, yeah, it's good that you said that, because I think if a foreign power had engineered Race to the Top, they would have been tried for treason. Why? Because it overturns fundamental principles. So let's take a look. How does Race to the Top work? Race to the Top works essentially by saying, if you do what we want, you'll get $700 million. So New York State gets $700 million. What laws had to change in New York State? So let's back up a second. Who's supposed to make law in our system of government? Legislatures. We have a federal legislature and we have state legislatures. And these state and federal legislatures are authorized as lawmaking bodies. Instead, what we had is an executive body at the U.S. Department of Education saying to states, if you change your laws according to what we want, we will give you money. That is de facto taking over legislative responsibility away from the legislature. What they did is said, increase your cap on charter schools. What they said is rewrite your teacher evaluation laws. Rewrite your laws so that you can share data and use the tests to evaluate teachers. And they also said you must join one of the testing consortia. We're part of PARC, which is called the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Career, a nonprofit agency that is accountable to neither the federal government, the state government, and it's run by Achieve Inc. and Pearson. Pearson's in over 60 countries around the world and writing the curriculum for Pakistan right now. This is a private association who's governing the assessment of 24 states. Kentucky recently withdrew. Florida withdrew as the finance state. Now Maryland's taking over. There's a lot of fight over this. So when you talk to your legislators and when you talk to your friends and neighbors, it's not just Common Core and testing in New York State. It's this entire testing apparatus that's being built by nonprofit agencies, National Governors Association, Chief State School Officers. These are like professional associations. They're not representative of anything. Okay? They're private companies. And through Race to the Top grants, the federal government asks states, quote unquote, to sign up to either the Smarter Balance Testing Consortium or the PARC Consortia. What does this mean? Well, we need to talk a little bit about the Common Core standards. One thing that you often hear is that the Common Core standards were state-led. Not true. States had no time to review them. In Texas, the State Commissioner of Education was called and threatened if they didn't adopt the standards, and he said, well, we haven't even reviewed them yet. They said, that's not a problem. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that for you. There was no time for communities, school boards, and legislators to review the standards. So even if we do like them, the process is fraudulent and undemocratic. Now, how did this happen? In part, it wasn't only Race to the Top money. It was also 2 foundations to pay careful attention to are the Ellie Broad Foundation, the Broad like Toad, B-R-O-A-D, and Bill and Melinda Gates. I think Gates needs no introduction. By the way, Broad made all of his money on real estate. He did well in 2008. He did well in 2009. He's doing really well in 2010. Even the PTA received Gates money to change their views on Common Core testing and data sharing. Our teacher unions have received money from the Gates Foundation to change their view on Common Core testing and data sharing. That's all coming to a head now, and I think it's exciting. Arnie Duncan was said to be on loan from the Ellie Broad Foundation to the U.S. Department of Education. He's worked with Broad Fellows, that's what they're called, and they now reside inside the U.S. Department of Education. If you look who works in the U.S. Department of Education right now, it's Gates people and Broad people, and they're the architects of this entire thing called Career and College Ready. The Gates Foundation has spent $1.5 billion since 2008 to get their vision of education imposed throughout the country. That's a tremendous concentration of power. So the one way I like to evaluate things is to look at the legal context. And this is where I'm going to end. And I'm going to read a provision of a law, because everyone likes law. Law is a good thing to start with. We should look at what's legal, and maybe we want to change it, right? But if our current practices, Race to the Top included, violate existing law, we're entering a period of lawlessness. This is the Department of Education Organization Act, PL 9688. This can be easily obtained on the internet. Under Carter, this is what made the U.S. Department of Education a cabinet-level position. It is the intention of Congress in the establishment of the department to protect the rights of state and local governments and public and private educational institutions in the areas of educational policies and administration of programs, and to strengthen and improve the control of such governments and institutions over their own educational programs and policies. What we're seeing is the exact opposite. It's the undermining of local education authorities, undermining of the authorities of district personnel, and the undermining of authorities of teachers. It is exactly in contradiction to the law in which the U.S. Department of Education is supposed to be bound by. Let me continue. No provision of the program administered by the Secretary or any other officer of the Department shall be construed to authorize the Secretary or any such officer to exercise any direction, supervision, or control over the curriculum, program of instruction, administration, or personnel of any educational institution, school, or school system over any accredited agency or association, or over the selection of content of library resources, textbooks, or other instructional materials by any educational institution or school system, except to the extent authorized by law. Common Core is an explicit breach of that law. Library books are being chosen based on David Coleman's Common Core. New York State was forced, bribed, you use whatever word you want, to adopt Common Core. Common Core was developed by the NGA and CCSO, but we would not be here if Arnie Duncan didn't dangle $700 million for us to do it, because winning Race to the Top money meant saying, yes, we agree to Common Core. It meant we say, yes, we agree to high-stakes testing, teacher evaluation. Yes, we agree to data sharing. And we would have not agreed to that had we not been in a difficult position. That's government by bribery, and it should be militantly opposed. It's arbitrary, and I think it's a bigger issue than just with education. We see that everywhere. So we need to... I love it when people clap for bad news, right? Woohoo! The government's out of control! Okay, but it's a real serious thing, so we should think about that. It's not just an issue of content, it's an issue of process. If we don't have control over our schools, which we've lost, no matter how great those ideas are, there's a serious problem.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison.
I didn't get squirted.
No, you didn't. We would never squirt you. Okay.
Oh, by the way, I have materials if folks want.
He has materials. Okay. Mr. Mark Beeler, the question that we have for you today is, can you explain what in bloom is? And currently, do parents have the right to prevent our children's data from being collected and stored in a data cloud?
Thank you. So I have a relatively technical question, and I'm going to do my very best to make it as least technical as possible, but ensure that you have the big picture. You have heard some names already. You've heard names of individuals. You've heard names of corporations. and names of organizations. And you're going to hear some of those same names, but they're going to be in a different context. And one of the big picture takeaways that I think we need to realize is that there are a limited number of individuals and organizations who seem to be pulling a significant number of strings to or in public education. And a lot of the policies that are being initiated tend to favor, and when I say favor, I mean provide additional profits for some of these individuals and organizations. So the question that I have is, what is in bloom? And I'm going to just briefly talk. I've had the opportunity to be in this role now for a short amount of time, but also about 12 years ago in the similar role, and that's as the Chief Information Officer. And what's unfortunate, really, is that a school district actually needs to take an educator and have them deal with student data. I don't know of anyone in my role in a school district who said when they were going through college, I can't wait to sit at a computer and make sure that the student numbers are right. Yeah, that's sad. And it's simply sad that we're taking time away from our families here to learn about what's happening when we really should be talking about teaching and learning and the benefits of being in a West Seneca school district and all of the great things that are happening. But unfortunately, we have to take this time and look at what's happening around us because it's impacting us here in West Seneca. So when I first started, I had basically two databases. They were separate databases. I'd say that they were on floppy drives, floppy disks, but that would tell you too much information about my age, okay? So they were simple. The whole point was basically to say, these are the kids that we have in West Seneca. This is how they did on the New York State testing program. And the New York State testing program has been around for a very long time. We've had 4th and 8th grade ELA math and science tests. We used to have 5th grade social studies tests. We all know about the Regents exam. They go way, way back. So this was the vehicle by which we would report how our students did. And it was relatively simple. But over the time that I've had the opportunity to work in this role, we've transitioned from those simple little databases to what's now referred to as a longitudinal data system. And what this does is it allows us to track students over multiple years in multiple schools. And there's a little key at the bottom there that happened, I want to say about 10 or 11 years ago, which is the fact, and you're going to hear it, you've probably heard it if you've been to a forum before, that our student is not a number. My son, I've got two sons and a daughter in West Seneca schools, and they're not a number. But in reality, I know they're a number. It starts with 900, okay? That's how we track our kids. And we do track them. We have our number here, and the state has an ID number that they are associated with. And no matter where they go throughout New York State, they are associated with it. And every month I get a report that says, Mark, you said this kid left West Seneca on October 2nd, but Williamsville says that they were enrolled on October 4th. Do you know what happened between them? You said this student was going to this school. They never showed up. I have a missing student report. I have false transfer reports. So we definitely track where these kids are going. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It ensures that kids are actually getting the education that they're entitled to. But my other task here is to talk about in bloom. So that's a little bit of the information. And you're going to hear me bouncing between this is the data that we have, that we use and can utilize in a constructive manner, and this is in bloom and some of the requirements that we have. So in order to understand what in bloom is, we need to take a look at the Council of Chief State School Officers. This is the same council that initiated the Common Core standards. So again, now we have a parallel. We have these folks with in bloom who have started at what at that point in time was called the Shared Learning Collaborative, and the same organization which initiated the Common Core state standards. And this is right off of their one of their purpose statements, is to provide a data warehouse in the cloud for all kinds of student data. Very specific for a technical organization, right? And it links that data to educational content. So there's two parts of what in bloom is, or I'm sorry, what the Shared Learning Collaborative is at this point in time. One is the data warehouse, which we've probably heard about if you've seen it in the newspaper. The other part is how we take that data and develop instructional content that's tailored to each one of those students, which at this point sounds great. Now, in July of 2011, $87 million was awarded from Bill and Melinda Gates. So, okay, this sounds like it's kind of a nice project. We're going to collect some information about kids and develop instruction that's tailored to them. All of a sudden, we have $87 million to support this. Okay, it looks like it's going to happen. Now, at the same time, so let's take a sidestep. In New York State, one of the Board of Regents' initiatives is to create a data portal. And you may have heard about the data portal. If you have kids in school, you know about the portal, probably, the Power School Parent Portal. A portal is an access point where you can get information. It's basically delivered to you. The parent portal in West Seneca is literally and physically in West Seneca. It is nowhere else. When you access it, you're accessing information right at our data center in West Seneca School District. So this data portal is a customizable dashboard that's going to give information to parents, students, and teachers and provide them with some insight as to the things in the past history that's happened with our students. Now, part of this data portal is to build a data warehouse of all of this student information. In August of 2011, the comptroller rejected from the Board of Regents a $27 million no-bid contract. Okay, it was just, they're the only people who can do it. We're going to give them $27 million taxpayer dollars to a company called Wireless Generation, which happens to be a Rupert Murdoch, you've already heard that name, News Corp subsidiary. And the goal was to build a database to house all of this student information. So now, they were rejected. But now we start to take a look at where In Bloom and New York State come together. In December of 2011, the New York State Board of Regents signed on to Shared Learning Collaborative. Recall, this is Shared Learning Collaborative. Their goal is to build a data warehouse and link instruction to it. Well, at that same point in time, or over those past 6 months, Shared Learning Collaborative has now partnered with Wireless Generation to build a national database of student information. So despite the fact that we said we weren't going to do it, Wireless Generation is now building this national database of student information. In February, and basically sat there for a year. Nobody really knew what was happening too much. Some folks who were relatively in tune were saying, you know what? They're building a national database with tons of student information. Nobody really seemed to be paying too much attention to it. Well, about 6 to 9 months ago, that started to change. 1 year ago, Shared Learning Collaborative, which was a limited liability corporation, transformed itself into In Bloom. So In Bloom has only been around about a year, but its real purpose, which is Shared Learning Collaborative, started multiple years ago and has had significant funding through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well as others, and is now a nonprofit organization. So the question now becomes, what is it? It started out as what seems to be a relatively positive organization. They suddenly have a significant infusion of a lot of dollars, and now they're starting to accumulate massive amounts of student data, not just from New York. You're going to see in a few moments some of the other states. Well, I can tell you this. Some of their motives may have changed, because last year, thank you, they had a conference. And at that conference, they proudly stated that this is a list of their partners who teamed with In Bloom to launch their brand of products. Now that they have a tremendous amount of student information, this has become a field day for tech startup companies to be happy to build software that we will then, as school districts and parents, pay for to deliver instruction to our students. There's some of them. There's some of the rest of the companies. They were all there and had the opportunity to get into the database and determine what type of products they can create. Okay, so the other part of this is, what data are we now being required to send to In Bloom? So we have a little bit of In Bloom. What do we have to send? Well, before I can even tell you that, you need to take a look at some of the flow of information. We have been collecting information about your sons and daughters for a long period of time, and it's useful. It helps us, and it stays locally or within the state. This is exceptionally complex. I'm going to draw your attention right over here. This is where we start. So let's make this simple. Here's West Seneca. We have information about demographics, where they live, so you get your report cards. We have information about our staff. And over here, we have information about lunch programs and other programs that you're in. Once a month, we're required to send this to BOCES, basically, called the Regional Information Center. Then, about 4 or 5 times a year, I need to say, this is good, and we send it to the state. This way, the state, remember way back when, 12 years ago, we still reported. We're collecting more information. But now, realistically, without our even conscious aware of it and without the consent, which is one of our issues, the state has been sending it to In Bloom. We, it's important to note right here, do not send information from West Seneca schools to In Bloom. The state has been able to circumvent that through some legislative actions to change FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is what protects your data. Okay, I'm down on time. I know it. We're going to go quick. So what type of information? This is the type of information. I don't expect you to read it, but this is the categories of information that gets sent. And in a moment, you're going to see each one of these is a data element, okay? So a data element, and I'm just going to let this run, is a specific unit or piece of information. Multiple data elements for each one of these is sent on each child. All of this information is being mined out of the New York State database, which we're required to send to, and is now, at some point, being housed in Bloom. There is even additional information. These are all different, by the way, and it just keeps going. Information that is being collected. Now, you heard Dr. Garrison and Dr. Crawford talk about the power behind this, and we've seen in the media how this information about us is being collected as adults, but that is sometimes with our consent. The issue here is that we did not give consent for this information to be shared about our sons and daughters. And we know when we tweet something, when we put something on Facebook, it does not go away. So we have some legitimate concerns about where we're headed with this information. So I'm getting to the conclusion part very shortly. Okay.
This is important.
So now we have a combination or connection between New York and In Bloom. New York has said, we're going to use In Bloom to collect the data for us, and then we can distribute it back to the parents. Well, you're going to see in a moment that I have a relatively significant issue with this. The state has contracted with 3 vendors to present that information back to us. Those individuals are right there. The cost for the 2 years, this year and next year, which they're not prepared to even deliver it this year, is free. Now, their understanding of free is we don't have to pay for it, but they're spending race to the top money on our behalf. And the cost of that is between $1 basically and $3 per student, and there are 2.7 million students in New York State. But the In Bloom fee, okay, is 2 to 5 times that. So here's the question. In Bloom isn't actually presenting the information to us. We have given it to them. They're giving it back. This is the perfect business model. Okay, ladies and gentlemen? You're paying my salary to report this data appropriately, along with virtually every other district in New York State, following the same format. It starts down here, it works its way up, goes to In Bloom. They give our data back to us so that then we can report it back out, and at the same time, we have to pay them. So my question is, why can't we go from West Seneca to our regional data warehouse, who already gives us reports? This is where my opinion is the money should be spent locally so that we can develop it. We already get a tremendous, all right. We already get a tremendous number of reports. I can share data with you about your students, the teachers, the buildings, the classes. We can compare one teacher to the region, one teacher to the BOCES, one teacher to the state. It's all right there. So this information that we are now being forced to pay a significant number of dollars for is already at our fingertips. So some of the concerns that have been voiced already. We see there's a potential security, or the issue about security of our student data. The issue of consent, the simple fact that we've lost some trust. Okay? This information was taken, essentially, without you providing, or without us having the opportunity to say, yes, you can have this information. And in education, trust is fundamental. There's been a lack, once it leaves New York State, it's a lack of elected official oversight. There's a potential for misuse. And then, once again, my biggest piece, well, not my biggest, one of my concerns is the cost. This is an ongoing, once we commit to this forever, potentially $5 per student. So these are the states right here. There are 9 states that are partnered with In Bloom. Now, what's interesting about those 9 states is that over the past, okay, hold on, we're only got 4. Yeah, that's kind of odd. What's interesting is that of those 9 partner states, over the past 18 months, the only state that is left committed to In Bloom is New York State.
Boo.
That is a problem. And it goes to not only the trust, but then the question of, well, why are we really investing in this? So, to answer the other question, how do we get out of this? Can we get out of this? This has been a question that has been posed by multiple people. And the state actually produced a document that is referred to as the Data Security and Privacy Fact Sheet. And this is their answer, which is just typical way we talk. There is no provision for parents to opt out of student data systems that are consistent with FERPA, such as the Engage New York portal. So it basically boils down to no. The other part of that, okay, it read shortly as no. The other part of that, if parents were, and please, okay, the last thing that I can be doing is advocating to drop out or opt out somehow. I don't even know how we would do that. Because it truly becomes we wouldn't even know how to get lunch or a report card or pick up your kids. Data is embedded in what we do. My role is part of the governance of that data and ensuring its security and integrity and the right people have it. So this is an issue that's very personal to me because I'm trying to figure out how I manage my position and be responsible to the parents, and to my wife for that matter, with our child's information, but at the same time follow the requirements that we have. So it is virtually impossible to eliminate this. Now, we are working, the school district has actually taken on an opportunity to review our policies to say, what information can we share? Because while the state will tell us the only way it's either all or nothing, I simply don't have to send it all. They don't need all of this information, in my opinion, right? If we're not using the portal, which we've already said we have a portal, we're not going to be using the portal. Now it becomes a matter of, well, what happens if we just don't send it? And that's a question that they don't seem to want to answer. So in conclusion, as with many things in life, balance is the key to success. On one end of the balance is the potential of technology, of a technology-generated student customized instruction, where a robust computer database provides a student who struggles with decimals but excels in physical education and plays baseball for the town with a lesson that calculates batting averages that the student enjoys and excels at. On the other end of the balance, it creates a potential for over-reliance on calculated outcomes, predetermination of student futures, and devalues the potential for change. And there is nothing more uniquely human and specifically American than the underdog overcoming expectations. Thank you very much.
Hi, Mrs. Dalbo. Can you please tell us what prompted the West Seneca Board of Education to create their statement of concern? And to the best of your knowledge, has the Common Core ever been piloted or proven to increase college and career readiness?
First of all, thank you all for coming. It shows you have a real interest in the education of your kids, and we so appreciate this wonderful turnout. I would like to take a couple of minutes to share with you my personal journey with the Common Core. Excuse me, did I say that? All right, with the Common Core. All right. When Common Core first was decreed, our immediate concern as board members was funding. Obviously, we always are thinking of the dollar. Here came another mandate which appeared costly to implement, and we were in the middle of annual reductions in state aid. But it didn't take long to realize that the problems with Common Core were much broader. I, along with 15 other board members from across the state, was invited to meet with Dr. King, Commissioner of Education, in September of 2012. And he explained the logic and reasons for Common Core. I began to get uneasy when I realized just why it was constructed and who also developed its components. There is a huge void of public school experience among the panel of advisors. And I think you need to know that. They created this Common Core, and a lot of them did not have public school experience. That's scary to me. The amount of testing involved and the time taken from the creative studies prompted my letter, which appeared in the Buffalo News in December of 2012. My concerns kept growing, and by March of 2013, I asked the Board of Education here in West Seneca to consider a statement of concern for the Commissioner and Board of Regents, and this was completed in May of 2013, and thank you, board members, for that. In September of 2013, I again was invited to Dr. King's Roundtable in Albany. He either has a short memory or it was a shock, but I went. What a difference in a year. While he was extremely defensive and immovable about the issue, the other board members from around the state were on my page. Finally, West Seneca was not alone. Parent groups had formed, there were hostile meetings around the state with the commissioner, and legislators were getting involved. What are the glaring objections to Common Core? Number one, the reasons for this huge misconception that our students are failing miserably worldwide have not been made clear. When test scores in America are averaged, every student is a part of those scores. In the U.S., every child is entitled to a public education. We value all children, and we include our special needs population in our scores. Now, other nations are selective. Kids are pre-selected for life's vocations, so the comparisons are not based on similar data sources. And you need to know that. Thanks. Number two, the testing system does not take into account child development. To have primary children filling in bubble tests is absurd. Thanks. Number three, the time it takes for Common Core instruction and related testing takes all the creativity out of teaching and learning. School is not fun anymore. Thanks. And number four, remember, one size does not fit all. And to label a student as a number for life is inexcusable. He or she just might surprise us and be that brilliant Einstein who had a hard time reading, by the way. Finally, and I'm going to be brief, but I would like the following understood about our own district here. It's important. Number one, West Seneca is not resistant to change. We were the first in the area to initiate a huge technology bond program several years ago. We also developed the Innovative Academy programs to help prepare high schoolers for college and careers. Before the financial slam in Albany, we were one of the few districts that had gifted and talented specialists in every school, teaching thinking skills and expanding horizons. We are progressive, we are proud. Our graduation rate and scholarship figures are high, even outstanding. However, we are also proactive, and when something is mandated that is flawed in several areas, we are not afraid to speak up. Thanks. I have always felt, as a board trustee, that my responsibility is to those thousands of trusting kids coming through our school doors every day, that they get the best education we can give them. Life is a long journey. We value those early years that we have with the kids. Let's work together and give them the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Janice. Okay. Mrs. Borchert, as a principal, how do you feel about the Common Core?
Oh, I'm going to use my First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. Each new unfunded mandate slams the gates to the orchard shut. There's an overarching sign on the gates, and it reads, and I quote, "People who are as curious as I am will be fine in any system." Unfortunately, the highly curious student is a small percentage of the kids. So, in other words, keep the elite, and for all others, it's the commoner core. The Common Core is touted as an elixir, educational medicine, the cure for all that ails public education. I keep getting a vision of a snake's snake oil salesman, sorry. Yet it has not been field tested. Imagine that. The Common Core has not been field tested. Where is the evidence? The body of evidence of how this will affect children. The train driving the Common Core is a mystery ride, a travesty. How is it that the authors are not accountable? We're accountable. Why aren't they? Why are they and the high stakes tests allowed to hide behind a veil of secrecy? Why can't we share the tests and the test questions amongst ourselves and with parents? Why not? People behind the Common Core have deep pockets. Race to the top money was given to all the states that adopted the Common Core. The deep pockets behind the Common Core stand to gain even more financially. They have great business models. You saw it here. Children will be spending more time on computers. Ask yourself, why is ExxonMobil advertising the Common Core? Why? ExxonMobil? Reading through the Common Core is mind-numbing for me. Sorry, guys, those of you who, my colleagues that might like it, sorry. To me, it's written like a tax code. Imagine an 8-year-old preparing your taxes. Would you take such a risk? The true tale of a free, moral, and enterprising people, the great American story, has had an axe taken to it. Where are the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things? Where are those stories? Whoever writes the stories controls the minds of the children. Children in public schools will be reading informational texts, not great literature, under the notion of career readiness. Move over to Shakespeare. The Common Core is supposed to level the playing field. I see it as erosion. Erosion of curiosity, erosion of creativity, and erosion of the joy of learning. My husband keeps reminding me, the purpose of a system is what it does. We will all be intellectually bankrupt. We will be an intellectually bankrupt nation. Tell me why I should fearfully, blindly, unquestioningly accept the alleged rigors of the Common Core when staring at data and sitting at my computer for hours on end feels more like rigor mortis when I should be inspiring teachers to unlock the gates.
Hey, Mrs. Gallagher and Mrs. Nowinski. It is a fact that there was not a single elementary teacher who wrote the Common Core learning standards. What are the biggest challenges you face with the implementation of the Common Core at the primary level?
It should be on. Okay, try it.
Is it on?
Yeah, bring it close.
I didn't really want to go after that, but
My name is Carolyn Gallagher, and I've been a kindergarten teacher for 11 years, and I've taught first grade for a year. I'm also a mom of a child who will be entering kindergarten in the fall, so this issue really does hit home for me. I should be excited for my son Jack to be starting kindergarten, and instead I approach this day with apprehension and find myself getting nervous for him. I know what lies ahead and all the demands that will be put on him. These initial years in school can be the most crucial for a child's development. They come to me in September with such a wide range of backgrounds. Some have been in school for 4 years already, to others who have never even attended preschool. Many children are coming into school now without being provided essential early educational skills and support to meet the demands of the new regulations the Common Core has placed on them. As educators, we embrace this and change our teaching based on their needs. We know that it is important to challenge these students and to help them grow. Unfortunately, the new expectations do not allow for children to develop and be challenged at their own developmental pace. And this is a term that I think a lot of us will be using or are using. The Common Core is expecting all of our students to have the same outcome at the end of the year. It does not take into account the range of student abilities, experiences, interests, and even their personalities. As a teacher, I struggle with this each day. The Core tells me to teach at such a fast rigor and pace in order to reach these new expectations. And although some children do keep up with this, it's heartbreaking to see the faces of many of the children who are just not ready to move at this fast pace. Their little minds are just not ready yet and only need some more time to grow. Remember that many of these children come in at 4 years old. We forget how truly young these children are. They are still learning about themselves and the world around them. They are learning how to be independent for the first time and to make good decisions and good choices and how to interact with their peers and simply just how to zip up their coats. Many of these children even nap when not in school because their body still needs it. Unfortunately, the Common Core forces me to push them all day long so they can be independent readers and writers at the end of kindergarten and at a very high level. I'm seeing more 5-year-olds with stress and anxiety, partially because they are worried that they are not doing well in school. They truly just want to please their teachers and their parents. I hear horror stories from friends who say their kindergarten child comes home crying because when taking his multiple choice math test on the computer, it said he was in the red. I am here tonight because as a parent and an educator, we all need to stand up for our children and let them know that they are in an environment where they feel safe and confident to learn and grow. I do not want my son or my students to become frustrated with these high demands we are being forced to put on them. I want them to love coming to school, to enjoy reading, and to do the best they can every day. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Nowinski. I am a first grade teacher. I've also had the opportunity to teach second grade, and before that, I was a literacy specialist for a number of years. As soon as my first graders walk into our classroom each day, they become my children. I care for them as a parent cares for their own child. I can't wait to watch them smile and laugh when something's funny, learn something new, and I can't wait to hear their stories. And if you've ever met a 6-year-old, you know how many stories they can tell. My favorite part of teaching children this age is when they have that light bulb moment. This is the moment when their head is held a little bit higher, their eyes light up, and they have a smile spread straight across their face. And you can often hear the phrase, "Oh, I get it now." I hope all of you in this room have been able to have that experience with a child because it is truly learning at its finest. Over the past few years, I have watched the demands of my first graders be raised higher and higher. Even though high-stakes tests don't formally begin until 3rd grade, the pressures of the demands of these assessments are felt in each and every primary classroom. It is my job as an educator of primary children to lay the necessary foundational skills for the future readers, writers, mathematicians, and scientists. The Common Core does not allow for children to learn at their own rate. Some children do benefit from rigorous work and figuring out difficult and challenging academics, while others do not. This is simply because these children are not developmentally capable of such work. It is not appropriate to expect all children to be able to work at this pace. The Common Core has changed grade level expectations across the board. These new requirements have forced my teaching to be at least 1 grade level ahead. Thanks to the Core, my first graders are now taught as second graders, because if I don't do this, they will be ill prepared for the high stakes tests that they will take in 3rd grade. For example, the Common Core for first grade mathematics states that first graders need to be able to represent and solve problems involving addition and subtraction. Now, you're probably thinking that this doesn't sound so bad. However, the problem with the core is there is so much text for these children to decipher through before they even actually get to that math work. I ask you now to take into account the child who loves math, yet struggles with reading. How on earth can that struggling reader make it through the difficult text to get to the actual math computation? The answer is they successfully cannot without assistance in actually reading that word problem. The bottom line is this: the Common Core is not just assessing the child's math skills here, but also their reading and comprehension skills as well. In my experience, the core does not just affect the primary classrooms, but it also affects the homes of my students. The impact of the core really hit home to me last week when we were having parent conferences. I was sitting with parents explaining the progress that their children have made since October when we met last. And these conversations always start off in a positive way because I explain all the gains that their child has made and that the hard work that they've done at school and at home has paid off. And I sit across from parents who are beaming because they are so proud of their child and they know all the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into those improvements at home. Unfortunately, oftentimes, this moment is short-lived. What comes next for me is absolutely heartbreaking. I then have to tell some of these very proud parents that the progress isn't sufficient for grade level expectations. Their child indeed has much more work to do to meet the requirements of first grade. And as I say this, these parents basically crumble in front of me. Instead of celebrating the progress that their child has made, they are forced to hear that their child's best just was not good enough. To me, this raises questions. At this rate, how long will 6-year-olds still love school? Shouldn't 6-year-olds love school? And at what point will some of these first graders be turned off from learning simply because the material is just too difficult for their developmental capabilities? The rigorous demands of the Common Core in the primary grades do not allow every child the same opportunity to love learning. I became an educator to foster lifelong learners who have a love for knowledge. And I can tell you this tonight, I will continue to do all that I can to help my babies, my children in my classroom achieve success. I am here tonight because we all need to work together to fix the problems with the Common Core and fight for our children. Thank you.
Mr. Ball, what are the specific challenges you and your colleagues face as a middle school teacher with the Common Core, and specifically the New York State assessments?
I'm glad you asked me about assessments because I didn't want to follow the information that's come out, especially with such nice people. I have to be the middle school teacher, the ogre. It's okay, I was cut out for it. The testing, particularly in the Common Core, has yielded a litany of negative effects on the students and the teachers and the buildings and the districts and the families. And I get to see what's happened after a few years of it. I get to see when the kids are in 5th grade. I've been teaching 5th grade since, well, I want to say 25 years. Some of my students are now my colleagues. Some of my students are now the parents of my students. I've seen more educational reforms and changes than I care to mention. This has got to be among the worst because of what it is yielding. I see educational changes that are forced upon the districts and the teachers that require a narrowing of the curriculum, a focus on test taking, because no matter what happens, the district, the teacher, the building, and that child are all judged on the results of a test. Tests that are flawed in a monumental manner. First grade tests that involve, I couldn't believe this when I was reading this. First grade tests, first grade, that involve things like questions about Mesopotamia. Are you kidding me? Mess of my potatoes, Ma, maybe. But Mesopotamia? Math questions that you alluded to, questions that involve things like, which of the following sentences is not a subtraction related? The kids can't read them. Now, you can't tell if you can't do the math. Testing that is so flawed that they won't even give you the results. It's like going to the hospital, having a blood test. The doctor says, by the way, you're going to die. We're not going to tell you why. Those tests have not been released to us. But that's, in reality, what's going on. Teachers are forced then to deal with students who are playing the guessing game. It's educational, where's Waldo? We teach a litany of skills. We don't even know what's going to be on the test. And last year's test is not an indicator of next year's test. So they could test, if there were 50 skills, test skills 1 through 25 this year, which we then focus on because we need to, and they test 26 through 50 next year. And here we go again. We don't know why students don't do well. We can't address their individual learning needs because these tests don't give the information back to us. Interestingly enough about the testing, I did some quick math, and my numbers might be off, so correct me. They take about a 4.5-hour battery of ELA, a 3-hour or so battery of math, another hour of science, and another hour of social studies. Now that's in addition to the normal tests that you might give at the end of a chapter. That comes out to about 9 hours of testing, or about a half an hour more than you need to get a law degree to get through 5th grade. You think there's pressure on children? Now, limited pressure is good. Pressure, there's some stress and value to stress. You get up in the morning because you have stress. You want to pay some bills. You put your shoes on and go out in the cold because you got to get to a job. There's reasonable stress. But when I see children vomiting, when I see children, thank you, when I see children, literally last year, a young lady wet herself because she could not leave the room, was afraid to ask to leave the room. I don't know about you. I got into this job because I like kids. And I know you are liking kids because you wouldn't be here, and I know you people, I've worked with you long enough. If we're here because what we're supposed to do is service a community and service kids, then this does not service kids. This hurts them. It's not why we got into this. It's not why you had kids. The last thing I'm going to say is that educating a child is more than putting facts in their head. Educating a child is about making them a better human being, making them moral, able to judge, able to work with people, able to be friends, able to stand tall and be proud of their accomplishments, not embarrassed by their failures. These tests focus on what you cannot do. They make us judge a fish by how well they can climb a tree. It's not fair to the kids. It's not what's right. If we're supposed to create better people, make them love school, make them want to learn, not when they're 6, when they're 16, when they're 66. This is killing learning. This is making learning an obstacle, not a goal. And that I can't sit by and see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Okay, we're going to start with Mrs. Carava. It is clear that the state mandates have had quite an impact on math and ELA. Can you explain how the current education reform has had an impact in your library class?
Thanks, Molly. By the way, thank you for inviting me to a small parent meeting at Allendale. Okay, thank you for that. My name is Rosalia Carava. I have had the privilege of being not only a teacher in West Seneca for the past 13 years, but I've also had the privilege of being a parent here in West Seneca for the past 13 years. As librarians, we're in a very unique position when it comes to both APPR and the Common Core. When APPR first became law, all teachers were included. As reality set in, New York State quickly found out that librarians did not fit their one-size-fits-all model for teacher evaluation. Librarians are in the small minority of teachers that are not part of APPR law yet. When students come to the library, they will not be given pre- and post-assessments.
Amen.
Assessments, let's say, in the research process are embedded in the actual research projects themselves, and that's the way it should be. Librarians are currently working with the district to develop a more detailed evaluation process for both the librarian and the actual library program without additional testing for students. Because of this, we find ourselves doing what librarians do best, supporting and enriching students and staff. Libraries have remained a safe haven, free of most of the mandates of New York State. When students come into the library, we don't see them as a 1, 2, 3, or 4. We see them as Samantha, who's feverishly reading Divergent before the movie comes out, before it's coming out March something. Mitchell, who has read every book on hunting and fishing that the library owns, and now has been given Hatchet by that sneaky librarian in the hopes that he will begin to love reading adventure books. Kyle, who is an amazing builder on Minecraft and is handed, by that same sneaky librarian, a book on architecture, hoping that a spark will ignite. Libraries have made sure that our collections are rich and diverse, meeting the needs of all students. And Dr. Garrison, I just want to let you know, librarians are the people in West Seneca who develop the collections in the libraries. Thank you for that. Students can come to the library and dive into the world of science fiction and fantasy, and not just the mandated nonfiction texts of the Common Core. As far as curriculum, librarians are also in a unique position. We have been witness to how the curriculum lives in each subject and in every grade level. One of the big problems with the Common Core is that on the surface it seems logical and no one could really argue it, except for Dr. Garrison. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you see how the Common Core fits into the reality of the classroom, and you realize that it has many flaws. Common Core is based on the notion that every teacher is a teacher of reading and writing. Reading and writing should be integrated in every subject. On the surface, how could one argue? When we dig a little bit deeper, we find flaws. Physical education teachers must now include reading and writing in phys ed. There was recently a group of students who left the gym to come to the library to do research on childhood obesity. If we would just let the students stay in the gym and be active, we would be solving childhood obesity. Most physical education teachers have 39 minutes with their students. In that time, students have to change, teachers take attendance, directions are given, and then the activity can begin. I, for one, do not want my son reading and writing during those few precious moments that are left. When reading the Common Core, some librarians considered it a godsend. Research and the research process is found throughout the document. In West Seneca, librarians, in collaboration with classroom teachers, have been teaching the research process starting in kindergarten, getting our youngest students onto databases, gathering information, and creating knowledge. However, let us not be delusional. We have been doing this not because the Common Core mandates it. We've been doing it because it's good teaching. When you hear discussions about the Common Core, we often hear the phrase college and career ready. We know that students heading to college need to be prepared, and it is our job to prepare them. But every time I hear the word career, I often wonder to myself, what careers are they specifically talking about? If your child wants to be a machinist, an electrician, a carpenter, or a plumber, the Common Core is doing nothing to help them. In fact, it is my belief that the Common Core will hinder their success. I recently read an article where Alan Singer stated, "My position on the Common Core is that it is useful to teachers and schools as a guideline, but not as a mandated set of skills that must be achieved in a specific time frame by every student." Now, Dr. Crawford, with your permission, I am taking off my West Seneca teacher's badge, and I'll make my closing remarks as a parent. As a librarian, I know how valuable data is. I know how data can be stored, used, sold, and even manipulated. Last year, my husband and I made the decision to refuse all New York State testing for our son. You often hear stories about how stressed out students are when taking these tests. I will tell you that my son's stress level was never a consideration in our decision. My husband and I believe that in small doses, it's okay to make your children feel uncomfortable because, as we all know, life isn't comfortable. We refused the test because we came to the realization that we held in our control the most valuable part of both APPR and the Common Core, my son's data. New York State has no test score for my child, and they won't have one this year either. Since the day we turned in our letter to Dr. Crawford, we have been treated with respect. We received no threatening phone calls from the principal or superintendent, which is occurring in other districts. My son was not forced to sit and stare while the other students were taking the test. He was removed from the classroom. That day, my son learned a new term, civil disobedience. My son has felt no negative impact from our actions. As he transitioned to middle school, I met with his teachers, and we all decided that he needed some extra help in math. The decision wasn't made solely on one test that he took. It was made on his performance the whole year. I can tell you that he's receiving the extra help, and he's doing great. I would just like to end by saying, with everything that you hear tonight, I still wake up every morning and consider it a true blessing to teach your children. And I thank you for the privilege.
Rosalia, thank you for that, and thank you for taking off your employee hat, a librarian hat, speaking as a parent. I just want to say that it is the consensus of our board and also the administration that when the testing time comes around, now, I'm not encouraging opting out. Superintendent, I'm not encouraging opting out. But no child will sit and stare.
I love West Seneca. Okay, Mrs. Greenway, can you please explain what an SLO is and how does an SLO affect your curriculum and instruction, specifically in art?
Thank you. My name's Kim Greenway, and I'm the art teacher at Northwood Elementary. I'm also a West Seneca resident and a future West Seneca parent of 2 students. I love being an art teacher in West Seneca. It's so inspiring to see the creativity and all the things that great kids can do. It's amazing. But SLOs really aren't the fun or creative part. Just to give you a little background on what an SLO is, or a student learning objective, it is an academic goal set for educators, students at the start of a course. It is intended to test the learning that is aligned with the Common Core, state, and national standards. The baseline data typically will come from a pretest administered at the beginning of the year. The end-of-course data is collected through the administration of a post-test. So who has SLOs? Since all educators must be evaluated on student growth, anyone that does not give a state assessment will be using SLOs as part of that, and I am one of those people. For the typical elementary art teacher, an SLO looks like this. It assesses 51% of your students. So that means, since the elementary schools only have 1 art teacher per building, 1 art teacher can have up to 4 to 5 SLOs per year, which I did have last year. This can equal out to about 400 students being tested for a single art teacher in that building. Furthermore, Countless hours were spent outside the school day scoring these tests from other art teachers in the district. Let's say if each elementary teacher had 200 to 400 students to assess that year. That means it was equal to scoring over 1,000 of these SLO tests for elementary art students. That's a lot of tests. In addition to that, there were hundreds of middle school and high school students' art tests being scored as well. Again, a lot of tests. Due to this, students are being robbed of having more time to be painting, sculpting, drawing, and just plain having an outlet for their creative expression. Tests at the elementary level were administered to entire grade levels for an entire week or two, twice during the school year. Since we only meet once a week for 40 minutes, this is a huge, huge loss of instructional time. The SLO itself is really just another fill-in-the-bubble answer test for students to take. It doesn't show any kind of creativity, the exploration of art, materials, or cultures, which is what the New York State standards are aligned with. And let's talk about testing overload. Most of the grade levels in the elementary art that got tested were usually the primary grades. This is usually because they tend to have the largest numbers in a grade level. So not only were they tested in art, they were also tested in their classroom, for SLOs, in music, and in phys ed that particular year. For assessments, I do assess students, but not in the way SLOs have me doing it. I keep a yearly portfolio for each student. I create projects with goals and objectives in mind to demonstrate in their artwork. Also, the elementary art teachers follow an elementary art curriculum map for each grade level. This lays out the skills and knowledge that we want them to know by the end of each grade level. SLOs do not in any way demonstrate creativity or the exploration of our visual arts or materials. In fact, that's what art is all about in the first place, and that's what's missing. Thank you.
Mrs. Burns, as a speech pathologist who tests many early learners, do you feel that the Common Core is developmentally appropriate?
Let me start by saying that there's a common misunderstanding about the speech pathologist's role within the schools. Many people believe that we're just there to help kids say their sounds properly, which we do. But that's only a small portion of what I do on a daily basis. Most of my day, I help students who are struggling with various aspects of language, including vocabulary development, grammar, listening comprehension, and phonemic awareness. These areas are essential skills for the development of reading. It is important for me to work with these students who struggle in these areas because almost every aspect of your child's day, whether at home or in school, involves language. I'm here tonight because I'm frustrated with what is happening in schools across the country. I see firsthand in my own home and school what the introduction of the Common Core has done to students. More students are struggling in school because of the increased demands that are being placed upon them. I'm concerned because what is considered developmentally appropriate does not line up with what is being expected of your child in school since the introduction of Common Core. My own daughter, a first grader who has loved and done well with school, is now showing disenchantment. What does it do to a child's self-esteem when they chronically come home with low grades on tests? If I went to my job every day with someone telling me, keep trying, almost there, but continue to achieve the same results even though I practiced and worked hard to my best ability, I would start to feel pretty bad about my ability to perform my job. Her teacher is wonderful and encourages different ways to practice and learn, but if she isn't developmentally ready, she will not meet with success. The pressures of the Common Core affect all type of learners. I think about my students that I work with in school who experience delays with language development. I see firsthand when I walk into classrooms that my students do not understand what is being taught to them. I read their body language and see kids either listening intently but not understanding a word of what's going on, or acting out in class. And this is with teachers struggling mightily to modify the core curriculum to help the kids to relate. When the students come to my room, I see joy on their faces. I love it when kids realize that we are going to work on something in therapy that they'll feel successful with. I feel this success because oftentimes we are working on what is a year or more behind what their same age peers are doing, yet is at my students' level. If my students are functioning a year or more behind what is developmentally acceptable, I shudder to think about how these students must feel on a daily basis within their classrooms when the current instruction in many cases is a grade level above what was being taught before the introduction of the Common Core. No wonder I frequently experience situations like what happened last Friday when one of my fourth graders asked to come to speech on a day she was not even scheduled. Students want to feel confident in what they are asked to do. This is the beauty of my job. I have the ability to fill in the gaps that exist in the foundational building blocks with my students and can help them to feel proud of what they can do. The Common Core does not allow for differences in learning abilities and expects all kids to fit into an educational cookie cutter. Thank goodness there are still services in school, such as speech language, to help students catch up. But I'm concerned about all student self-esteem and confidence, especially when they do not fit into the cookie cutter mold and are not able to find success at their grade level. I do engage in testing to help my kids. And this testing is based upon developmental norms, meaning it's based upon what they should be doing at a given age level. It is diagnostic, meaning it tells me what a child can or cannot do, what they need help with. And prescriptive, it does tell me what goals I can work with my child to help them to be successful. What is worrisome is that when students are not struggling enough compared to developmental norms, they are not able to receive those extra supportive services and fall through the cracks because not all learners develop at the same rate. Frustrating is how I describe my job these days because I went into this profession to help. We as educators will continue to support your child to grow at his or her own rate and will support them no matter what shape cookie cutter they fit into. Additionally, we will continue to use a variety of recipes when working with your child, since no two learners are exactly alike. We do not want to create a generation of learners who give up before they have a chance to truly experience the joys of learning. Thank you.
To all of our panelists, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. And Mrs. Borchert has a little story to read before we open it up to the floor.
I have a fable to read to you that a wonderful statistics professor from Duval College reminded me of, and I hadn't heard it since I was in the second grade. And I hate to tell you how long ago that was, but nevertheless, I would like to read it to you. It's important to me because classics were, at one time, a part of the curriculum, as were fables. Long ago, the mice had a general council to consider what measures they could take to outwit their common enemy, the cat. Cornish rex would be the cat, in case you can make any connection to what rex means. Some said this and some said that, but at last a young mouse got up and said he had a proposal to make which he thought would meet the case. You will all agree, said he, that our chief danger consists in the sly and treacherous manner in which the enemy approaches us. Now, if we could receive some signal of his approach, we could easily escape from him. I venture, therefore, to propose that a small bell be procured and attached by a ribbon round the neck of the cat. Okay, so some of you are envisioning a tightrope, I get it. By this means, we should always know when he was about, and we could easily retire when he was in the neighborhood. This proposal met with general applause until an old mouse got up and said, "Tish, tish, tish." This is all very well, but who will bell the cat? Thank you.
Thank you again, everybody, for coming tonight, and a special thank you to Dr. Crawford and our Board of Education for being such strong advocates for our children and our schools. As well as representing our rights as parents. Thank you to Mr. Cervoni and the staff at East High School for the use of the facility and for their cooperation, especially on such short notice. At this time, we've got 2 mics at either end here. If anybody has any questions or comments they'd like to direct towards our board, we ask that you can try to keep your questions brief to allow as many people as possible an opportunity to speak. We've got about 10 minutes or so.
Hi. I came here armed with information on Common Core. I'm very excited about what I found here tonight. The attitude was completely opposite of what I thought I was going to find. So thank you. But my question is, well, I have 2 actually. Is the goal that we're all coming here for, is it to revise the rollout, revise the plan, or eliminate the whole thing altogether?
I think the goal has to be that we have to retain control over education. We wouldn't be here.
So it's eliminate. It's
so
eliminate.
If we decide we want it, then we decide we want it, but we were never asked.
That's right.
So the issue is, it's decision mapping. Trace the reform for the last 30 years, and what you see is the removal of decision-making from people in the practice setting. Big data and in Bloom is about removing decisions from the practice setting so that you eliminate teachers, you create temp workers, and you cheapen education. That's what this is about.
Well, that's
Look,
exactly.
You can oppose this without knowing why we're doing it, but you're not going to win.
And my
unless you
other
understand
question
why.
is, you know, we're talking about all these testing and stuff. Testing is good, okay? Challenging our children is good, right? But these tests reflect nothing on their academic score. So why can't we all opt out? What is stopping us from opting out? Will you still get the grant money that the school district desperately needs, or is it based on how many students are being tested?
I always get these interesting questions. Yeah. Oh, no, I'll be happy. Well,
the simple answer, we don't know. They
Right.
keep saying people can't opt out, but people are opting out. So that's what people need to
Because
come to
it
a
doesn't
conclusion about.
reflect their score. So why are we subjecting our children to this?
It's a good rhetorical question. That's why we're here tonight.
Yes, hi. You know, you guys didn't really say where this came from. This was put into law by Obama with the 2008 stimulus package. Without Congress. Therefore, this whole thing is totally unconstitutional. You talk, doctor, you talk about, you know, them gathering all kinds of data. You fluffed it. They're going to go beyond. They're going into physical. They're going to tell you, your children, what they're going to do when they grow up. You know, it goes way, way beyond that. Their basic civil liberties are being taken away. Their freedoms and their rights. Tell them about the MRIs. Tell them about the electronic equipment they want the children to wear. This is ridiculous. This is communism. This isn't America. When I was in the military, I signed a piece of paper to defend the Constitution against all enemies, local and foreign. It doesn't have an expiration date. And I'm behind you all the way, Doctor. Please don't stop until this is over. Thank you.
Somebody please take the mic.
You know, the last time I was in this auditorium was graduation of 1987. And I always knew I'd be back speaking, although I always thought it was as President of the United States.
It's not too late.
It's good to be home. I truly mean that, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight. I come here, like many of you on the panel, wearing different hats. First of all, before I get started, I just want to give a head nod to Senator Kennedy's office, who does have a liaison here. Legislature is in session right now, but thank you. My name is Kevin Gibson. As I said, I'm a graduate from West Seneca East, 1987. I have a young daughter, 13 years of age. She attends public school, Amherst Central, and Amherst has been, at least her principal, has been at the center of the Partnership for Smarter Schools, and I'd like to give a head nod to great leadership both in West Seneca and in Amherst. I also come here as a Buffalo public school teacher. I currently teach at Hutchinson Central Technical High School, and I'm a social studies teacher, so if I ramble, that's probably the main reason for it. But I am also, besides an educator, and I'm very familiar with the SLOs and APPR and all the other acronyms that were used here tonight. But I wanted to speak to the motion and the statement of concern that was made last spring by West Seneca. In Buffalo, we were following that, and just 1 month before your statement of concern was made on the council, the floor of the Council of Delegates for the Buffalo Teachers Federation, which I am the secretary for the federation. We also passed a resolution. Just want to give you two of our whereases, my favorite two out of many, and I think Dr. Garrison was channeled in this. Whereas the public now remains with no recourse to redress the issues of the content taught in public schools, and whereas the purpose of public education should not be to convert human beings into consumable raw materials for the international labor market, so-called college and career ready, be it resolved that the BTF implement or join existing publicity campaigns to inform parents and the public at large of the negative effects of the Common Core state standards. And I'm here as a unionist, I'm here as a parent, and as an educator, standing behind this resolution. So thank you.
Hello, I'm a teacher and a parent. I'm speaking as a parent this evening. My 3 children are opting out and have opted out of the state tests last year and this year as well. Yeah. And I just wanted to echo the part of the point that was made before. It's, of course, they get stressed out, and of course, it's not valid tests, but I think more so it's a way for us to recognize who the authority is on education. It's the parents and the teachers who are the ones who know about education, know about childhood, and we were never asked about these having these tests, and this is a way for us to actually take some initiative and have some power in our hands to say, no, this is not acceptable. And so I just wanted to, applaud you for that stand that you took, and also, calling you to consider what these tests are about and where they're coming from and whether or not our children should be taking them.
Hello. I actually live in Williamsville, New York, but I am a product of West Seneca. I grew up in West Seneca and attended West Seneca schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. I skipped the Common Core informational meeting in Williamsville last week. I chose instead to come here tonight because I knew that my hometown would not feed me the Kool-Aid. So I appreciate that. I'm a Buffalo public school teacher and a parent, and I know the answer to the question that I'm about to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyways and slowly, and I want the answer to be loud and clear. What is the consequence to my child, to my children's teachers, and to the school district when we refuse these tests? And secondly, how do we go about refusing the tests and the pre and post tests for SLOs and LMAs? Thank you.
The state has told us that parents do not have, now don't hang me, I'm getting there. Parents do not have the right to opt their child out of the state testing program. That's clear. That's the direction that administrators have been given, and that is the message that we are to communicate to parents. But we here in West Seneca have chosen to not stand between a parent's choice and the child. So you have heard that we are not going to have our sons and daughters sit and stare. But to answer that question particularly with regard to the accountability, which is what this is really about, we have been assured that basically we are in, or what will be in, the second year of a sort of hold harmless, so that there will not be a negative consequence as a result of test scores. So in one way to answer your question, and I have to be cautious with this because it seems as though there's an easy answer, which is that there is very little to no repercussions. But the other piece, or part of that answer, is that we're really not quite sure what happens after next year. We are required to have 90% of our students assessed. If we fail to meet that, we will not meet what is referred to as adequate yearly progress. Doesn't matter how well they did, we simply won't get there because we didn't meet the 95% assessment requirement. Now, we have told that we will be basically, because all of our schools in West Seneca have been in good standing, that they will stay in good standing. What happens after that second year, I don't know. What we are optimistic of is that we will have the opportunity, or basically a 2-year moratorium, which you have heard NYSET has advocated for. I'm also the vice president of the Empire State School Administrators Association. We have strongly advocated for a 2-year moratorium as well, to give us time to determine what the actual impact of the assessments are and be able to adapt to significant change and make an educated decision. So I guess the short answer is, short term, we do not anticipate that there will be any significant negative effects.
I would just like to make an addition to that. The answer to all of this is in Albany with the legislation that can happen. And we already are seeing it with today's report. So please, advocate with your congresspeople.
My question is regarding our special education kids. I have a son who has Asperger's, who has oppositional defiance disorder, who's ADHD, who's dyslexic. And my child needs the funding for these special programs. And I know the funding is tied to the testing. So if we opt out of the tests, we don't get the funding. So if we don't get the funding, how do we meet the needs of our special ed kids?
Right.
I fought for my child from kindergarten to 5th grade. He's in 5th grade now, excelling. From K through 5, I fought to get him the help that he needs, and it was a struggle. And I saw a kid who, at the beginning of his education, who hated school, talked about wanting to die because he didn't want to go to school. He hated it so much, it was so difficult. I'm not gambling with his education. I fought too hard to get to this point, and I don't want to backslide. So how do we meet those needs if we opt out of all the testing? Because a certain percentage of the kids have to take the test to get the funding.
Well, the question I have in
right.
relation to what she's saying is, you say we're in good standing for 2 more years, there's a moratorium on that. In good standing to who? The State Department of Education?
Right. So,
and the consequences of that not having good standing is what?
Sure. So, the state classifies essentially what would be a school as either a school that's in good standing, which all of the schools in West Seneca are, and I want to say always have been, in good standing, and that's based upon meeting the requirements for performance and the requirements for participation. You will see many schools across the state who are not in good standing. They are perhaps a CINE school, which is a school in need of improvement, or a school under registration review. Each one of our schools in our district are basically registered and have the right to teach
students. And that is given to us, and we have basically earned that through the state education department. That can be under review or be identified, in which case we might need to put supplemental plans in place. So there is a process whereby we basically could be shut down as a school. Now, we're far, far away from that.
That whole mechanism needs to be shut down immediately.
Well,
like you guys.
Yeah.
Your agita is felt by all of us, all right? And we are working toward that. And you heard me read those letters, those press releases. The legislature has got the message. They have given the Commissioner of Education a direct order going into the next Board of Regents meeting this month. There needs to be a change in outcomes coming out of this meeting, or people are going to go nuts, Senator Flanagan said to him. So we are all there, and it seems to me that they're indicating that if the regents won't change, the legislature will enact legislation and law to change it.
Right.
So that's why everybody here has got to get on board and get involved, contact, emails, phone, letters, all those things to send that message. If you guys do that, we're doing our share here. We need everybody else in this room and others in the district to continue to support our cause.
And, ma'am, to address your question in particular, we cannot deny your son or daughter the educational services based upon whether or not they take a test. Well, I don't know as though the government can, because in one form or another we are the people who execute the rules and the laws, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we would, and hopefully, West Seneca would not do that to your son or daughter. It's not going to happen.
Anyone who has their child denied a service that's in a situation, you call Molly and the rest of us, and we'll come help you.
I come from a little different place. I have 2 kids in West Seneca schools, and my son is in the 4th grade, and he is academically talented. And one of the members in the panel had said, "The curious will survive; they'll flourish." I disagree. Last year, 3rd grade, second day of school, testing was mentioned. They were taught to the test. I know the teachers have to. I understand that. I understand their jobs are online. But my son, who learns easily, he's curious. He already knows the things in the 4th grade. He knew them in the 2nd grade. He's not going above and beyond where he should and where he is able to. And I think my comment is more to the parents, is if you have a friend out there who's saying, my son does fine in school, my daughter does fine in school, the Common Core doesn't affect them, it does. Because my son does excellent in school. Never a problem, excellent reports card, took the test last year, did fine on them. Won't take the test this year, that's my choice. It affects him because his teacher has to teach everyone to this level. And there's kids who are going to be down here, and that's fine if they're down here. My son is up here, but he's brought down to here because the teachers have to spend so much time for these kids who are not ready to learn some of this material. And it's not fair to everybody.
Go ahead. Ladies before gentlemen.
Hi, I am a high school math teacher actually in this building. I am one of the fortunate few to be implementing the Common Core algebra with our freshmen. And I have 4 sections this year, so close to 100, 100 freshmen that I'm teaching the Common Core algebra. I can tell you I also teach AP Calculus, and this summer when we met together as a group of algebra teachers, trying to just understand the concepts and what they were getting across to us that we needed to teach to our students, it took 8 of us, high school math teachers, with math degrees. Here's another one. Also the AP Calculus teacher on the west side of town, also teaching 4 sections of algebra. We have like identical lives. It's really weird. Yes, some more over there. So, one more over there, yes. So, just for us to decipher, that was a huge undertaking. And so that's the first step. What hasn't been mentioned here is that the Common Core Algebra exam is a high school graduation requirement. So our students do not have the opportunity to opt out. We do not have the opportunity to encourage our students to opt out. And so all of them will sit for it. And I can tell you, as a teacher who's been teaching for 16 years, this has been my hardest year by far. To watch these kids, I'm going to get upset, watch these kids who are struggling so hard, and it's really not their fault. They have not been prepared for Common Core Algebra because, oh yeah, Common Core started last year. And they are now being tested, Common Core K through 9, but there's huge holes. Today I had to teach, we all had to teach, completing the square, which, just in case, it's a method for solving a quadratic equation. It used to be, when I started teaching, it was a pre-calculus topic. The past 5 years or so, it's been an Algebra 2 trig topic. Those are senior and junior level topics that they are now pushing us to teach freshmen who can barely solve a linear equation. So it's really challenging, and it's really hard, and as much as we can do to continue to force the issue, to help the legislation, and to help parents understand that this is a huge, it's a problem, and these kids are not going to be successful, and they hate math, they hate coming to my room, and I don't think it's me. For years and years, I usually have students who really like me, and this year they don't want to be anywhere near my classroom. It's just they're feeling, and it's so hard to pass back tests that we're showing them that they are failures when they're not. They just are asked to perform at a level that they were not prepared to perform at.
Okay, sir, and then we have 2 people at the mic, and then we have to cut off questions. If you have further comments or further questions, any one of our panel members are available to speak with you privately.
Okay, wow, I'm not used to speaking to big crowds, but my name is Lauren White, Mr. White as some know me. I'm PTO president at Lovejoy Discovery School 43 in Buffalo, and I'm proud of mine is mostly just a comment that it's great to have a school board that's supporting, West Seneca. That's great. How do I get my school board to do the same?
You're doing it right now.
I'm trying, because most of my school board is bickering too much to fix our problems. It's just great to have you guys here. Like I said, I need to know more how to get mine behind us. Because I am the PTO president. I don't speak for all the PTO in Buffalo, but I for sure am not behind Common Core. That's not going to happen. My kids are opting out, and hopefully, I'm not saying do it, but you should. That's all.
I'm a parent of a student in the district. I went to the district. Some of you on the board actually might recognize me. I don't know. I don't fit the cookie cutter, just so you know. I like green eggs and ham. And I don't think that Edison or any of the greats in science would care whether Eduardo knew how many dimes he can divide through a classroom of 36 students. I don't think he cared. So I am going to talk to my wife tonight because I'm a responsible adult. I'll say that I will ask her first. But my child, I was going to say my student, I guess all of us parents are teachers as well. I will be asking my wife, because it's her night to have the remote, if I can opt him out of these tests. And then wait and see on your word, doctor, as to whether or not I will continue to opt him out after the 2-year, whatever period you'd like to call this. And I want to also say thank you to all of you for filling me in on the gaps of this, because I did not know pretty much anything about this. I did know the conspiracy theory stuff of the Pearson group and all that stuff, but I didn't know enough to make a decision until tonight. So thank you very much. And I also want to say one thing to the data man there. I appreciate your job, and I want to let you know that I do support the use of the parent portal. It is a very helpful tool to us parents. So any of you parents that haven't used it, please do. Hopefully that every time I log in from my home, they don't get my IP address.
We cannot confirm or deny.
Agreed.
Anything. Mr. 194.28.761.
Thank you very much for your time.
I just have one more comment, and I would respectfully like to disagree with the math teacher. They can opt out, because this test is being legally imposed on our children, okay? And we can opt out, okay? They're going against the Constitution. This is our legal right. And where you want to go is truthinamericaneducation.com to get the form. There is a form needed to opt out. They're not telling me to do this, so the board isn't doing this. Truthinamericaneducation.com, and get the form and opt your children out, even in the math class.
Just before we wrap up, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, for the kind attention that you gave to everybody and the speakers, and also the support you gave to everybody who spoke at the mics here this evening. I think a lot of ground was covered, but it also, I must tell you, is tremendously comforting to share with you the situations we are facing. And I am confident as we go forward as a school community. And by the way, for those of you who are not part of West Seneca, you are coming from other schools and institutions, we are glad you came to join us this evening, and thank you for your input. I just want to say one thing. Rachel Kingston from Channel 4 was here earlier. She's a 2005 graduate of East Senior. And Mike Desmond, a former parent I worked with at Northwood Elementary here in West Seneca from WBFO. Michael. Thank you all.